You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we're talking about the 1985 horror film based on the Stephen King novella Cycle of the Werewolf. We're talking about Silver Bullet. Here we go. Welcome back to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. And this time we have hashtag stranger friend, Fan2Fan All-Star Alan joining me to talk about, I don't know, arguably, maybe for some, maybe not for others, maybe not for us. We'll find out. That's why you hit play. We're talking about 1985 Silver Bullet.
Whenever the moon is full, it's out there, in the shadows, in the fog, watching and waiting to strike. Now, from the master of mystery and suspense, Stephen King's Silver Bullet, the last glimmering hope. Stephen King's Silver Bullet. From Paramount Pictures, rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
Some of the movies that came out around the same time as Silver Bullet are movies that I think might be in your all-star 80s classics, Alan. Commando, Fright Night, Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead. So even though Silver Bullet, not a moderate financial success, I saw like the budget was $7 million. It made about 12 to 13 million. Wasn't a breakout hit. But for me, this movie was like one of those movies that was like a staple of a Saturday afternoon. So like I grew up in Chicago, and the Fox affiliate almost every Saturday from 5 to 7 would air The Navigators, E.T., Goonies, Terminator, Highlander. And in that whole mix, they would throw in something like Silver Bullet. How did you first catch up with this 1985 werewolf flick?
Interestingly enough, and I think I may have mentioned this on a previous episode, I first tangled with the great bear-like werewolf from Silver Bullet in the middle of the night at a sleepover in second grade. The first sleepover that I had ever attended outside of my little neighborhood crew, if you will. Went to a sleepover at Richie Gay's house. This was new. I didn't really know any of these guys, and apparently there was no limit on rating in the Gay house, and we threw on the R-rated Silver Bullet, which is amazing to think about today because I was watching it this morning and I was like, how is this R-rated? But we watched Silver Bullet. We put it on at midnight. By 2 a.m., every kid in the house at the sleepover was lining up at the phone on the I'll never forget, on the side table by the couch to call their parents to be picked up and brought home. But I was in. Apparently, this idea of watching things that scare me, it had me hook, line, and sinker from that point on. I wanted to show it to my neighborhood friends who I watched movies with, back at the time. I thought I was so cool because I was watching a Stephen King movie. It was just such a cool experience to watch that in the middle of the night at a sleepover and then watch everybody shit their pants and run away. So
I love it.
This Halloween, after the kids are done trick-or-treating and are safely tucked away in their bed, it's time to get scared. Come on down to Fancy Vids, where for the whole month of October, rent 2 frightfully good films, get the third one free. Come browse our latest and scariest selection of VHS rentals, and remember, don't be afraid of no ghosts. Fancy Vids, make it a fancy fright.
From what I was reading, it seems like most people who saw this saw it like you on VHS. I think that's where it actually got its cult following. You worked at a video store. Was this a movie that was considered a cult classic, or was it just kind of like in the stacks in the horror section?
So Silver Bullet was in the horror section. I mean, it did though have the King following. So I mean, it's interesting because this was a Dino De Laurentiis, Stephen King, these little novellas or novelettes by King, Maximum Overdrive, right? That whole time in the King era, these are the feature length movies that De Laurentiis put out. They didn't make a lot of money. Did it have a cult following in a nutshell? I would say that if it did, it was because I was pushing it. I was always pushing it on people. I loved knowing Silver Bullet. It was almost a little bit like knowing The People Under the Stairs, right? One of these movies that should have a cult following and probably does a little bit more today than it did, say, 20 years ago when all we had is video stores. It made its way out the door, courtesy of your boy here.
From the master of suspense, Stephen King, comes a tale you'll never forget. Silver Bullet, Halloween night at 8 on Movie 32.
When we think of The Thing, it's not The Thing. It's John Carpenter's The Thing. And I saw with this one all over the place, Stephen King's Silver Bullet. So you know for sure when this was coming out, they were basically pimping out King's name to try to get asses in the seats. And I know there's tons of other podcasts that'll kind of fill in all the gaps about how this was based on a novella called Psycho the Werewolf. It was supposed to be a calendar. Bernie Wrightson, you know, we're both comic book nerds. He did some of the artwork, and it turns out Stephen King, no surprise to anyone, likes to write, and he couldn't just contain it to a calendar, so it becomes a novella. You get all the Stephen King stuff set in a small town, classic King territory, mixing of the coming of age story. You get the monster flick, you get the mystery, because spoiler alert, we don't know who the werewolf is. And by the end of the movie, we certainly find out. But I think this one feels more family friendly because it's got less violence. It's got less gore. It still has some, but it's got a lot of humor or a lot of heart, but it's not pretty heavy handed.
No, it's not heavy-handed at all. In fact, I found myself, and you know, every time you rewatch something, I feel like you catch, especially when you're a fan of it, you just catch more, right? You catch more of the vibe and the angle. And, you know, I said to myself, I said, you know, I should look up Daniel Attias, right, the director. And I said, I know this name. What a catchy name. But he's a famous television director. He was in that whole cycle of like the HBO sweet spot. He was a big-time Sopranos director. He was a big-time 6 Feet Under director. He was a big-time Big Love director. And like Silver Bullet is the one credit in his IMDb that you will know as a movie, and then everything else is TV. I mean, he does a ton of It's Sunny in Philadelphia, so he has clearly a knack for comedy, and I think that it was very apparent early on, just from the first kill down on the train tracks, when Werewolf comes in with one clean chop, cuts off old Bill's head while he's just trying to drunkenly shovel up some dirt.
The killing had begun, but at first no one knew it. You see, Arnie Westrom was a chronic drunk, and what happened seemed like an accident. The county coroner concluded that Arnie had passed out on the tracks. There wasn't enough evidence to conclude anything else.
You know what's funny is I noticed as I was watching, the R rating had to come, Bernie, from the intensity with which grew in the violence, because by the time we kill Terry O'Quinn, about like 3/4 of the way through the movie, we're bashing his head in with the Peacemaker baseball bat. All right, look, all we're missing is the eyeballs popping out.
Plus, there's like the legit scene with Corey Haim, who plays Marty, and he has got like a chase scene. And, you know, again, spoiler alert, you haven't seen this. He's confined to a wheelchair. And then later on, his uncle, who's played by Gary Busey, builds him this badass wheelchair. We'll get to that later. But there is like a legit car chase scene between a car and a kid in like a wheelchair. And yeah, it's a souped up wheelchair for sure, but I kind of worried for that kid or the stunt double kid that was in that wheelchair, because I was like, this is a car, this is a big deal. So that's what I have to imagine, like between the intensity and the fact that like a lot of the movie is the perspective of Marty, the perspective of his sister Jane, who's doing the voiceover. And there's something kind of charming about it and watching it now, because you get this sense, and I don't have a sister, but you can sense that their relationship there is what we imagine like a lot of teenagers, young adults of this time would be. You know, the kid's got his issues, his sister's got her issues, they're boys, they're girls, they hang out with different groups of people, they have different interests, they annoy the shit out of each other, they want to watch different TV shows, they probably don't sit at the same lunch table when they're in school. We get all of that, and then on top of that, we get a werewolf mystery thrown on top of it. But I think there is something really cool about her voice that kind of grounds the film, because we also get the sense, again, watching the movie over and over again, it gives you a little bit more. You realize, oh, this voiceover is certainly not happening in real time. Jane is now older, and she's reflecting on the things that happened in the past, which gives you a little bit of a spoiler, because, oh, so she's alive. So whatever happens in this movie, she's going to survive, but we don't know if everyone survives.
And I understood one thing with total clarity. Marty himself believed it all.
For a movie that, for the most part, really doesn't have a big cast. Corey, who's Marty. We got the Reverend Lowe, Everett McGill, Gary Busey, who's Uncle Red. Before this, he had been Oscar nominated for the Buddy Holly story. And you get Megan Follows, who's Jane. You get Terry O'Quinn. And like in the background, all the townspeople, I've seen that face before. I've seen them in something, and I don't know what, but I've seen them in a few things. Either they're there as victims, they're there as comic relief.
Came from over there.
As far as I could tell, it came back of us. It ain't down there, Andy.
We'll spread out in the skirmish line. That son of a bitch tries to come around us. We'll get him.
For the most part, it really is Marty, Corey Haim, and, you know, he's a rising teen actor at the time, and his story and how he's caught up in this werewolf mystery in this small town.
It's funny that you brought them up because I was writing down all the character arcs that appear in the background that are basically just fodder for the canon, right? For the werewolf canon. Bill Smitrovich, who is who's Andy, who leads, you know, the party to go kill the werewolf, the vigilantes. You know, they're just sort of like led to the slaughter, but there's a little part in there with Lawrence Tierney. Joe of the criminal empire that Tarantino built in the old Pulp Fiction movies. You know, he's actually the one that brings the bat that the werewolf takes and kills him with.
There's a guy sitting in the bar. The bartender says, "Hey, jackass, give me a drink." So the bartender pours him a drink. He drinks it, sits there for a while, says, "Hey, jackass, pour me another drink." So he pours another drink. The guy gets up and leaves. The guy that's sitting there says, "Hey, why do you let him call you jackass all the time?" The bartender says, "Oh, he always calls me that."
Busey just chewing up scene as Uncle Red, right? And I read somewhere that Busey was actually allowed to ad-lib a lot of his lines because he said he was feeling the soul of Red within himself.
That's not surprising at all, because in some ways, it almost feels like everyone is in this sort of a lighter tone, kind of like kid-friendly Stephen King adaptation. Busey, I don't know about you, like, I felt like he was real. He actually felt like the fun uncle that we all wish we had, probably the fun uncle that would have rented Silver Bullet for his nephew to come over and watch at his apartment, that probably had a lot of beer cans and maybe a big old log of salami, cigarette holes, Ritz crackers all over the place. But he's like, "Hey, no, I'll rent that movie, and if you want to have a bunch of your buddies come over, like, I don't give a shit. R-rated film, just don't tell your mom." That's this guy. But yeah, the fact that he's ad-libbing everything, he was Uncle Red.
You can't bet manager.
Okay.
We said time and time again, you can't bet manager.
So I bet you're a Yankee.
Piss on the Yankees, piss on the Indians, piss on the Phillies, piss on the Braves, piss on...
Mom, come on.
Whoa, man. Let him finish the game. Okay?
You know how when you think of an actor, right, there's a certain role that just goes with that actor, right? You and I were talking earlier about Fight Club. I always think of Brad Pitt as the Tyler Durden, imaginary Tyler Durden, right? I think of Gary Busey, and it's a weird thing to say, but I think of him as Uncle Red. It was my first exposure to him. I hadn't seen Mr. Joshua yet. For me, I always associated Busey as like Uncle Red the Protector. And I think that when I was watching the movie for the first time as like an absolutely terrified second grader, I was like looking for Uncle Red to save all of us.
Where's it coming from? Over there? No, it's behind us. I told you couldn't trust this fog. It's under the fog.
What are you saying?
It's right here with us.
And the other thing that this movie is, if not just a Stephen King adaptation, but also one of the 1980s werewolf movies, because there were a lot of them in the 80s. You had Miracle on Earth in London in 81, The Howling in 81, Wolfen in 81. And I know people say, like, is that a werewolf or are they wolves? I don't care. I'm putting them in the group picture. It's a werewolf movie. That was the peak. You had this come out in 85. Well, after that peak, and it still has like the body horror transformation, like where you get the human turning into the werewolf. It's definitely a little bit more kid-friendly, I think, in the transformation. Like, it's not meant to be like Brundlefly and The Fly. Like, they're not trying to Cronenberg this up. David Atias was trying to still stick to practical effects. We're still going to see a human transform into a werewolf. It's more like a larger bear-type creature. And maybe that was because that was Everett McGill's body type, but they were definitely going for like the more traditional werewolf on its hind legs type werewolf.
In King's novella, the werewolf in its mania and its growling was almost overheard speaking English, right? And I know that they sort of had to cut that out because they did have in the filming, they had that split where they decided that whoever the stuntman was doing the werewolf scenes, that he wasn't doing them as well as Everett McGill could do them. So McGill is actually credited as the priest and then also the werewolf in the movie. But for a second, if you want to just get into that fucking church scene, that nightmare that Everett McGill has.
The Bible tells us not to fear the terror that creepeth by night, or that which flieth by noonday. And yet we do. We do. Because there's so much we don't know, and we feel very small.
Reverend, he was torn apart!
Every time I see that, that's the point in that movie where we're in this scene where like everyone in the room is taking part in a werewolf orgy. There's a werewolf playing the organ. The SFX department took over and they were like, we're going to take the reins for a second.
And it was so surreal, like an Italian horror film. It feels like a music video. It doesn't feel like the rest of the movie. That's got to be the scene that at the sleepover, you had a few kids that were like, nope. That's the line. I got to call my parents. I'm out.
Let it end, dear God. Let it end.
There's two things that I wanted to talk about with themes, namely because I think, again, you watch this movie and I think as you get older, you start to see a little bit more. And there's stuff in there about private justice and vigilantism, but that's kind of super obvious. I think no different than like the fun uncle, like archetype. He represents maybe the freedom that Marty doesn't have. So when Uncle Red comes to town, he gets the fireworks. He can stay up a little late. Maybe he can watch a movie that he wasn't supposed to. But again, going back to that one scene, the funeral scene where Everett McGill is in the pulpit preaching and sermoning to a bunch of werewolves.
It's hard at a time like this to find the words to offer you any comfort.
There is no comfort. There is only private justice.
Religion, the hypocrisy, where you get like the killer is, spoiler alert, the Reverend, balancing faith and the fact that he is hiding, the fact that he is a monster, that he's in this small town, like you mentioned, that gets together and they have pie eating contests and they give awards for the best pickles and stuff like that. And he's supposed to be an authority figure. There's the sheriff, the mayor, the priest, the reverend, and he's supposed to be there to help people, to console people, but he's got the guilt. He sees himself as flawed. He sees himself as dangerous. And the fact that he has that sort of moral duality. Hey, I'm supposed to help the people, so I'm literally giving the eulogy in front of the town of the person that I killed the night before. And you're supposed to have this trust in the institution of the church and justice. But at the same time, there's the hypocrisy of, yeah, I'm the person that you trust. I'm also the person that's literally filling up those 5 caskets.
From the master of suspense, Stephen King, comes a tale you'll never forget. One moonlit night it appeared, and no one knew how to stop it.
My son was torn to pieces.
A terrified town with nowhere to turn, and death at every door. One boy, one chance. Stephen King's Silver Bullet.
Monday at 8:05 on KHNL 13.
There's this interesting thing that happens with Everett McGill, and Everett McGill is, as much as we were lauding Busey, McGill, everywhere McGill shows up, he does this thing, right, where he makes you fucking scared of him as a man. He's trying to control the fact that he's become the wolf eating his sheep, right? So, like, he's the wolf eating his own flock.
In another movie, Hugh just leaves. Uncle Red and Marty go on the road trip and they go hunting down this reverend that's a werewolf. But the opposite, after he gets his eye poked out, it's the next day Jane, Marty's sister, is collecting cans. And I love that whole scene. We get to see her kind of do the little tour of the town. We get to see the guy in the barbershop. His face is being covered up because he's getting the shave and he's got the hot towel on it.
Marty had seen where the rocket had struck home, he said. And I went out that day looking for more than just cans and bottles.
Hi, Mrs. Thayer. I'm collecting returnable bottles and cans for the MedQ drive. I was wondering if you had any.
I was looking for a man or a woman with just one eye.
Hello, Jane.
Who is it?
It's Jane Coslow.
She's pushing the cart. She's done her check. She's given up. She's not going to find the one-eyed man. And then as she moves by, it's that brilliant shot. She's walking behind him, and he looks up, and he looks menacing, and he's got the bandage on the eye. And
there's Everett McGill. There's the Reverend, and he's gardening, and he's out there doing what you would expect him to do. Put the bottles in the back, no big deal. With the quick, sinister turnaround, and like, oh, it's him. Question for you, Alan. Watching it now, did that Reverend twist, did it feel predictable to you? And again, not a fair question because you've seen it before.
So I watch this movie annually, and you know that we do, my wife and I, Rebecca, we do a Halloween marathon. We watch monster movies, horror movies from October 1st through October 31st, ending with Stephen King's The Shining. And Silver Bullet is in the early mix. So, I get to watch it every year, and I've become very familiar with it. I think that in the first half of the movie, they did such a nice job masking the Reverend until such time that it was very much him. And now we're going to spend the last third of the movie trying to convince the adults to help us.
And at that point, like you said, the director has given us enough red herrings. Oh, it could be the sheriff. It could be one of the private justice mob folks. It could be any one of them. But I think as much as, is the Reverend twist predictable? Sure, maybe for someone who's more mature and has seen more films. Okay, fair enough. I'll spot you. Maybe it's a little choreographed, but is it effective? Yes, it's still effective. It still works, even though it's revealed a little sooner. This is less about the mystery now. Everyone knows that it's him. So now we have to get to the point of how do we resolve this? Now we got to deal with the silver bullet. Now we got to get adults involved. Now we got to get adults to believe.
The man Uncle Red had gone to see was more than a gunsmith. He was, Uncle Red said, an old world craftsman, a sort of wizard of weapons. He confirmed the high-grade silver content of my crucifix and Marty's medallion, melted them down, and molded them into a silver bullet. Marty had read all the legends about werewolves, and though they differed on several minor points, they all agreed on one. It takes silver to kill a werewolf. And we were taking no chances.
There it is. Nicest piece of work I ever done, I think. Ought to be pretty accurate.
Oh, well, shoot, it's just a gag. What the heck are you going to shoot a 44 bullet at anyway? Made out of silver.
How about a werewolf?
The other theme I wanted to throw at you, because this probably was a bigger deal in 1985, not so much now. Yes, it's a coming-of-age movie, but then there's the disability perspective with Marty as the main kid. I don't know about you, Alan, but I didn't see a lot of kids in wheelchairs with disabilities featured as the heroes. What I did see in a lot of those movies, think of Goonies, Explorers, Navigators, are the kids as outsiders. And I think that's why a lot of us love those movies, because in our own ways, we felt like the outsider, the kid who maybe wasn't sitting at the popular table and in the cafeteria eating with the cool kids. We were with the nerds looking at Fangoria or watching Star Trek or reading comics, whatever it was. We felt like outsiders. In this one, I think they almost heighten the vulnerability, because not only is he an outsider, we don't see him necessarily partying with all the cool kids at that town gathering in the beginning, but he's now even more vulnerable because he's in a wheelchair, because he has physical limitations where obviously he's very ingenuitive. He can get around and he finds ways to get around things. So he's not limited. But when you get into a movie that's about a werewolf chasing you, putting the main kid, our protagonist, in a wheelchair makes for I think an even more interesting a storytelling device, because it could have just been easy to not put Corey Haim in a wheelchair, but they did. So there's something kind of interesting about that. Again, when I watch the movie now, and this is beyond like representation, I just like, oh, this is kind of cool. They almost doubled up. Not as only is he the outsider, he's vulnerable. So that means he has to be that much more braver, that much stronger, that much more ingenuitive in order to survive.
He was brass balls the whole time. It's very apparent from the first scene where he's sort of like, you know, he's almost like led by his buddy there, his like only friend, to like make his poor sister fall in the mud in her new dress, and then she gets very upset with them, and then they show them coming home, and sort of like I love the progression of like showing the parents with like the wheelchair cart in the back, and they gotta set up the ramps, and they gotta get him in the house, and you know, you have to go take care of your brother, even though he saw to it that your ass fell in the mud in your new dress just a few minutes ago. You still have to go help him because that's your duty, right, to take care of your handicapped brother. But what we learn as the movie moves on is that the handicapped brother is actually the badass, and that was something that I remember from childhood as being like, I wonder if I was in his position, if I could be the same way, if I could have the same mentality, if I could be as fearless as him.
Oh, okay. The coast is clear. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like a virgin on prom night. Here's how you started. You remember what I told you?
Yeah.
Now be damn careful.
Okay.
How you started. Put your hand on the brake.
Push.
There you go. Push.
Sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Go get him now.
There are some scenes in that movie like where he's dodging the car, right, in the silver bullet chair, driving himself into like a wooden structure or railing just to narrowly avoid the car. He's eating shit. It's like the perfect arc. His parents consider him easily breakable. I don't think his sister does. I think his sister knows that he's kind of a badass, and I think his uncle is the one that has been fostering this mentality and this behavior, and this is just the spirit within this character that I like. This is what Corey Haim used to be so good at doing. Think about Lucas. He was like this undersized little weenie, like, who plays football and almost dies in a pile at the bottom. And Haim could just embody that. He was very, very good at being the underdog and then giving you something that surprised you. And I can't imagine this movie without him being in the chair in the silver bullet, buzzing around that town and getting a goddamn car chase with Everett McGill.
It started as fun, but the fun stopped and the terror began.
Has anybody in here seen my son?
Yeah. What if it's some kind of monster?
You know, like a werewolf or something.
Oh, that's good. What are you saying?
Right here with us. My son was torn to pieces.
Now the moon is full, and only one thing on Earth can stop it.
There are no such things as werewolves.
Silver Bullet, a Paramount National paid cable exclusive you won't see on HBO or Cinemax, only on the Movie Channel.
One last question for you, Alan, as we kind of wrap up Silver Bullet. Does Silver Bullet work better for you as a coming-of-age story? So I think something like Stand By Me, quintessential coming-of-age story, or horror movie, something closer to Pet Sematary. What does Silver Bullet work better as for you?
It's interesting that you asked me that. So you just talked about Stand By Me, and I was going to ask you if you thought that the kids from Stand By Me lived 2 towns over from Marty, and if they had heard about this, you know, like in the King world.
For sure. I mean, the one thing about King, you know, with it, the movies that it inspired, like Super 8, and then shows like Stranger Things, the whole Kids on Bike thing is something that is a very unique place and time. You know, like you connect the DNA right back to Goonies, of course, like Stand By Me and all of it. All of these kids feel like they're just one town away from each other. So it does feel like Corey Haim and his sister, like they're not that far away. It just happens in his town. There's a werewolf. And in another one, there's Pennywise the Clown. They're just one covered bridge down the river away from each other.
Right. It's like, so you can't leave, you can't leave Tanker Falls because then you'll end up with Pennywise in the next town over. You have to deal with your own demons. So I will say that as much as I would love to call this a coming of age movie, I still have to keep it in the monster realm. I was really impressed by the way that, like I said, just the way that Haim's character and Megan Follow's character, like they realize that they have to do this. And they realize that the only person that they have, to rely on is the coot uncle. And that's coming of age. When the parents are not listening and they're not paying attention and they're, running off on Halloween night. Because let's not forget, too, this ends on Halloween night, which is like not nearly played up enough. Because I think you and I would feel 100% horror movie, monster movie if the Halloween aspect, the night of the final kill, kids trick-or-treating and ghosts and goblins in the middle of town and jack-o'-lanterns. I was thinking to myself, damn, did they miss an opportunity with Halloween? But I think that at that point, they were trying to also stick to the fact that people had left town. People were running scared and no one was going out.
And we get a lot of this now because we've seen this movie so many times. And I think, we're looking at it from very different perspectives, older perspectives. But maybe that's what makes Silver Bullet endure, is that it's not just a horror movie. It's not just a werewolf movie. It's not just about that small town paranoia. It's the fact that when Tarker's Mill gets taken over by fear, when the grown adults panic, the mobs start forming for that private justice, or like you just mentioned, they leave town altogether. The people who choose to stand and fight are Marty and Jane, and you have a kid in a wheelchair and his sister that become really the emotional center of the story. And maybe that's what elevates it beyond just a simple monster movie. You've got Corey Haim and Marty. He's fearless. And Jane's journey is just as important because by the end of the film, she's not just a protective older sister. She becomes Marty's partner in confronting this evil, this monster head on. And together they carry on that kind of courage that Stephen King has always written about so well. Ordinary people that are forced to grow up fast, and they have to because the adults around them, like you said, they're not there to save the day. Maybe that's why Silver Bullet works as both a horror movie and a coming-of-age story. Like I said, not really a fair question. The werewolf may be the monster, but the real story is about these two kids discovering strength, loyalty, responsibility in the middle of all of this unbelievable, unimaginable fear. And by the end, Marty and Jane are the ones that end up restoring hope for this small town. Kind of end it with a quote from Stephen King, who wrote that, quote, "Monsters are real and ghosts are real too. They live inside us and sometimes they win." And since we're talking about monsters on Monster Mania on the podcast, I think that quote, that concept, that idea runs really well through Silver Bullet. And maybe that's what makes the movie extra special, especially for those of us that grew up with it and keep revisiting it, is that Marty, is that Jane, they prove something else beyond the fact that monsters are real, is that courage is real, and sometimes it can win.
I love you too, Marty. Good night.